Anyone could pick up a garden flowers on their way home from work on Valentine's Day, but I'll show you some terrific ideas for gifts that will make that day remembered for a long time. In the past, I've shown how to make a box with a bow, a leaf shaped box, a heart shaped box with storage compartments, a heart puzzle, and a heart shaped you me decoration. These videos are all still available, and I'll leave links to them so you can go back and watch any you may have missed. I'm going to show you how to make two similar Valentine's Day projects today. I've made this first one before in oak, but today I'm going to make several of them in poplar because I want to paint them red. This project is easy enough for even a beginner. The second project is suited more for an experienced scroll sawer because of the many inside cuts for the letters. But if you feel confident you can make those cuts accurately, this will be a good place to develop your skills. Both patterns are from Steve Good, and I'll give you the link to them in the description. Let's get started on the first set of double hearts. I'll start with the easier of the two projects. It consists of two overlapping hearts, and it could be used as a candy tray or perhaps as a catch-all for small items. I've already made this in oak, but today I'm going to make it in poplar because poplar takes paint nicely and I want to paint it red. This is 3/4 inch thick material, and poplar is a relatively soft hardwood. I'm using a number 9 Pegasus modified geometry blade for this. Pegasus blades cut quickly and accurately while leaving little to no tear out on the bottom of the workpiece. In case you haven't seen it, I'll leave a link to my test of 14 different scroll saw blades. You owe it to yourself to try the Pegasus blades, and I'll leave a link to my supplier, Bearwood Supply, in the description. The way I'll go about making this double heart tray is to make the inside cuts, then glue on the 1/4 inch plywood bottom, then make the outside cut around the perimeter of the two hearts. By doing it this way, you create a perfectly fitting bottom, and you don't have to fool around with sanding and make the sides and bottom match. You need one pilot hole in each section of the double heart to thread your blade through to make the inside cuts. The only difficult part of the cuts is the point at the bottom of each heart. I drill the pilot holes close to the point, cut to the point, then back off pressure on the blade slightly, pivot the workpiece, then start feeding the blade in again at the new direction. It takes a bit of practice, but it's a skill you need to learn if you want to become skilled at scroll sawing. As an alternative, you can go from the pilot hole to anywhere on the cut line and follow the line all the way around to the pattern until you get to the point. You can stop there, then use the waist area to maneuver the blade to the other side of the point to finish the cut. This generally results in a rough spot in the cut, but you can go back and clean that up later with a scroll saw, a small file, or some sandpaper. The important technique for making long cuts is to let the blade do the work. If you push too hard, the blade may flex and it could overheat. If the blade flexes, you won't get a straight up and down cut on the edge of the workpiece. If the blade overheats, it may burn the wood and it will eventually break. Broken blades are a sign you're doing something wrong. Use a blade until you can tell it's getting dull, something you'll learn from practice, and then toss it and replace it with a fresh blade. I glued a 1/4 inch thick piece of plywood on for the bottom, and now that the glue is dried, I can make the outside cut. This is as easy as it gets because it's all curves except for the bottom of each heart. The best way to handle these is to start at one of the points, then follow the curves until you get to the second point. Continue past that point until you run off the backer, then you can start the cut again on the other side of the point. You'll have to make a sharp turn here, but it's the only one. You'll finish the cut on the other side of the point where you started. I used my homemade spray paint booth to finish the first project with a bright red. I'll leave a link to that in the description in case you're interested in building your paint booth for yourself. After the paint dried, I gave it a light hand sanding with some 400 grit sandpaper. Painting usually raises the grain of the wood, making this step necessary if you want a smooth feel to the finish. The second project is similar to the first, so let's get started on it. I began the second project with the inside cuts for the letters. This is the most difficult part because you need to cut the letters very carefully. On most projects, I try to cut right on the lines, but this is an exception to that rule. Because the letters are close together, I need to make the cuts slightly on the inside of the lines. If you stray outside the line and make any letters a tiny bit too large, you may find that one or more letters will run into each other. And you need to be careful making the two cuts for the letter O, because if the ends touch, the center of the letter will fall out. Notice that the arm of the Pegasus scroll saw holds in the upper position to make it easier to thread a blade through the pilot hole for inside cuts. You leave the blade clamped in the lower chuck, thread the workpiece over the blade, lower the arm, then tighten the upper blade holder. Both blade holders are tightened with thumb screws. No tools necessary. This is 3/4 inch thick poplar, and my rule of thumb is to use a number 9 blade for this thickness. Since the letters require great accuracy, I slowed down the motor speed, making the cut less aggressive. An alternative approach would be to use a number 7 blade to cut the letters and a number 9 for the heart-shaped cuts. I'll leave a link to my video on determining blade size choices in case you're new to scroll sawing or could use a refresher. Cutting the letters proved to be challenging, but by staying on the inside of the lines, everything turned out fine with no disasters. The next step for this project will be to cut the heart shapes. For the first project, I made the inside cuts, glued on a plywood bottom, then made the outside cut. But due to the nature of this design, because of the way the hearts cross over, and there's a continuous cut line from the inside to the outside, I'll have to cut the bottom separately. I thought about drilling pilot holes and cutting out the inside patterns that way, but I like the look of this design where the two hearts are better delineated at the crossover points. This is what it looks like after you're done cutting. I decided to make this double heart set like the photo that came with the patterns, so I painted the top red. While the paint was drying, I cut out the plywood bottom. The plans specified 1/4 or 1/8 thick material, and since I have plenty of 1/4 inch plywood on hand, I cut the base from that. I switched to a number 3 Pegasus modified geometry blade for the 1/4 inch plywood. I had to slow the blade speed down as well. This is about as easy as it gets, just one long cut with gentle curves. Since the paint on the heart was dry, I went to my spray booth to get it and saw how it looked with the plywood bottom. At first, it seemed like the bottom was a little larger than the top, but then I realized the difference was because of the width of the scroll saw blade's kerf, where I made the cuts separating the two hearts. When I glued the bottom on, I left that slight difference in place, and everything fit perfectly. Here are both completed projects side by side. I like them both, and my biggest critic, my wife, liked them both as well. She suggested I try painting one pink, so I may do that when I make some more. I'd appreciate any comments, and of course, click the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. That way, you won't miss any future project videos.